Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. That it. With episode 913 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to talk all things NXT and AEW, but not only that, we have vintage Chris Vanini on the horn for your WWE Saturday night's main event preview. Vintage, of course, will break down the entire card with the Silver King. He will also provide all of his thoughts from the last week in WWE. We will be getting to him momentarily on the second ever birthday show here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. That's right. Silver King is turning, not going to tell you the exact age, but I am over the hill and I am washed. So it is great to have Vintage here to celebrate with me and break down everything with all of you. I was going to try to do some type of fun interview or something else for the show, but everything that we have ahead in the coffer is future dates, most likely in August and September. So keep your eyes peeled and your ears at attention for all of that. As we get into the show, allow Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about the fire.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show on YouTube. You can listen to the show. You can watch full-length video interviews, hit the link on our profile, join our free Slack channel, subscribe to the podcast, and do plenty of other things like shop on WWE Shop. Find it all on social media at Getting Overcast. Chris, welcome back to the show. Missing your second Tuesday in a row, but for great reason. You were once again given the opportunity to cover the World Cup. That is now officially over in terms of you being pulled away from the program. So that's positive. But this has been, and I've said this on social media. I've seen you say the same thing on social media as well. I've been a soccer fan of some degree since around 2002. So less than 25 years, but still a pretty decent amount of time. And I've watched the World Cup on occasion before that, but not with any real knowledge of sports in my life, at least. This has been the best World Cup ever, and I have been transfixed by this. I can only imagine what it's been like for you to be able to attend, how many matches at this point? 4 or 5?
Yes, 5. Hi, hello. Yes, I'm here. I'm alive. It's been a very busy month and a half, going from soccer game to Big 12 media days to Vegas to being sick to another soccer game. 5 games, all in Dallas. You know, we just saw England, Argentina have an insane finish. To me, it's the greatest World Cup we've ever had. Maybe need a not ugly final game to kind of cap that off. But this thing's going on for a very long time. I've loved it. Every game almost is good. Spain-France wasn't like a great game, honestly.
It was frustrating. Yeah.
But it was probably the least interesting of all the games that I covered. But the skill is just kind of wild to see in person. Like when you see Kylian Mbappe move in person, he's just one of those dudes where you're like, oh, that guy's just different. Like when you do like one of those athletes, one of those like top level athletes, they just look different than everybody else when they're out there. He's like that, even if he didn't play great. Man, this has been an awesome tournament. I think all of sports, I think all of wrestling, all of television, we'll be glad that it's over so everybody can go back to looking at other things, because the World Cup's been sucking all the attention away from pretty much everything.
Yeah, wrestling's been murked outside of, shows that did not have direct World Cup competition. I mean, seemed like for a while, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, there was something else going on. And frankly, as much as I do love wrestling and you do as well, it's really tough not to turn your attention to what was happening in the World Cup, because that's how incredible it had been over the last few weeks. Vintage, let's get into this show. It's nice to have you here, as mentioned. We're going to save the Saturday night's main event preview for the second half of your appearance. And what we'll do is anything that you want to say about individuals involved in those matches from Raw and SmackDown over the last week. I'll give you the opportunity to do that before we break the matches down, individually. So let me just hit you with some topics from the week in WWE. And then if there's anything I missed that you also want to talk about, you can do that at the end. Let's kick it off with everything that happened with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. They obviously had the head-to-head, face-to-face, I should say, contract signing in the middle of the ring. Roman got over more on Seth than the other way around in terms of what they said and how they said it. How did that play out for you? Do you feel like the build for this is still strong moving into SummerSlam a couple weeks from now?
Yeah, I didn't like the beginning of their contract signing, but I liked it by the end of it. They came around and got better. It was Seth being kind of cocky and arrogant, and you always lose to Seth Rollins. It's a good talking point, but it doesn't make for an interesting story when both of the guys are overly confident, look the same, and talk in sarcasm. And so when Seth's walking away, I was kind of disappointed by it. But then it came back to Seth being passionate, Seth talking about not being the number one guy like Roman is, and all the stuff he's missed out. Kind of what he said, I think, a couple weeks ago to Roman's face. That was much better. Honestly, I think the best promo Seth has cut on this topic of Roman was in the ring by himself last week when he got interrupted by LA Knight, of all people, who kind of ended up stealing the spotlight a bit.
It's interesting you say that. Sorry to interrupt you. It's interesting you say that because people called that boring. I thought it was him, expanding his character story and trying to storytell. And while I do agree it went too long, I thought it was pretty compelling, all things considered. But a lot of people didn't like that. And they believe Rollins' promo from the first face-to-face, where he got Reigns to agree to the match, that was the strongest. And I probably think so too, if I'm being honest.
It was also very strong. But look, a lot of us, we know the story between them, at least those of us who have followed these guys for a long time. You can't just repeat the same things over and over. It's got to be different also than Seth Punk and Roman Punk. Mm-hmm. So where do you find that? You find that by Seth being able to position himself as the underdog, as the guy who wasn't necessarily the chosen one, who was able to move his way up because of the work he did when he was put in that position. So I thought it was good. We still have a few weeks, like you said. So to this point, there's a good, solid build with a lot of kind of time to make it better. It's a lot different than the other championship match that's going on. So I've enjoyed it. I think I do wonder, is this the last Seth Roman match we do? It may be. Because you can only kind of go back to that, so many times these guys are older. Roman's part-time, Seth's hurt a lot. Might be the last one they ever do. And I'm curious if they kind of lean into that a little bit more down the stretch.
Yeah, it's certainly the last planned, we're going to go with this match in a major spot, and therefore we're going to make the most out of it because we don't know when Roman's going to work, if Rollins is going to be healthy in the future. They could potentially rematch this 2 years from now for whatever potential reason, but they're treating it as if it's not going to happen because they can't plan on it. And also there's so many young stars that are going to need to take those spots over the next few years. Now, I did not dive too deep into the context of Seth's promo outside of sharing a general opinion of it Tuesday, but his perspective was pretty interesting. Fighting the internal battle of wanting to be the top guy, realizing it wasn't going to happen for reasons outside of his control. So he needed to accept just being better without the recognition. But now he has the opportunity to go head to head with the guy who has served as a human glass ceiling on his career to this point. It's human, man. It's relatable. And I'm not sure Rollins and even the creative team is getting enough credit for his character's motivations. And while Rollins' best promo here, like I said, was probably 2 weeks ago, Reigns cut one of his best promos of the last few years in this segment. What's bubbling under the surface still is how Roman feels Seth betrayed him. And that has long been the root of his character, that he just can't trust anyone and feels like he has to do everything on his own, even though we as fans know the office was behind him the entire time. So while Rollins has a chance to break the ceiling above him, Reigns has a chance to prove he not only belongs in this position that he's been given in many ways, but that he's achieved past the betrayal and can put that behind him for good. It's quite layered. But again, due to the truncated timetable, I don't know how much of that is being picked up by fans. And it's unfortunate. I don't know, Vintage, if you heard what I said Tuesday about those horrendous short video packages. Those should be used to tell the story that I just shared.
Yeah, those were an incredible letdown. Like when they first talked about this multi-part, all this stuff, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what you and I say they need to do, which is a lot of people weren't watching The Shield 14 years ago. They don't know the whole thing. They didn't experience it. And even if they've seen highlights, maybe that's all they know. So this is the opportunity to tell that story. Punk and Roman did a good job getting into their history in the build up to WrestleMania. And I feel like Seth and Roman are still kind of just talking as if everyone knows it. And then those video packages will kind of fill in the blanks, but they didn't fill in the blanks. It was like 30 seconds of just, here's a highlight. I was shocking that that's all it was. I don't even know how, what even left there is to talk about the history between them. You kind of done a lot of it already. So yeah. I don't know.
It's going to be interesting. I'm going to do some quick hitters for you. And you can just give me your thoughts and we'll move on. Obafemi, Brock Lesnar segment.
I was glad you mentioned it, that it's the second time that Paul Heyman had used restraining order stuff. So I'm glad you acknowledged that. Also that it was fake and weird. I have a feeling, a thought on that ties into a couple of other things that I'm going to get to in a second, but it was okay.
One of the weaker parts of their feud, I would say.
Yes.
Royce Keys losing to Jimmy Uso on SmackDown, and then LA Knight teaming with Keys and Solo Sikoa for this 6-man tag team match against the Usos and Jacob Fatu.
A good end result. Jimmy Uso getting protected all these times makes no sense in the world. Remember, he also beat LA Knight, I think, like a couple of weeks ago, too. Why is Jimmy Uso getting all these wins? It doesn't matter. It doesn't help him. Like, it's not like anyone's taking Jimmy Uso any more seriously because he beat Royce Keys. He's Jimmy Uso. He is what he is. So, baffled my mind. You ranted about that correctly. Ultimately, in a good spot, 6-man tag. We'll talk about it. It's what? Yeah, we'll talk about it going into SummerSlam. But it feels like the B version of the War Games match we'll probably get at the end of the year.
But that's problematic because that's in November and we're in July. Like that, this shouldn't be the War Games match.
No, I'm saying,
you know what I mean?
I'm saying right now you'll do it with LA Knight and Solo and Royce Keys. In November, you'll do it with, I don't know, Seth and whoever, like the bigger LA Knight maybe's there, but
they got to avoid doing another Bloodline War Games. It's got to be.
I agree, but they've made this whole year Bloodline.
I know.
You know, that's what they're doing.
Intercontinental Championship #1 contendership gauntlet. Chad Gable winning, but to recall back to what I said Tuesday, being in the penultimate spot in a situation where I believe you thought too, that he was going to get to run, maybe not the whole thing, but at least most of it.
Yes. Like you said, can't complain too much about working to get Javon Evans and Chad Gable, make them both look good, which they did. But it did come at the expense of Gable, who just needs it more. Like, Javon Evans is good right now. We really could have used a big run, 45 minutes from Gable, for the people to really get behind him, really get used to him being Chad Gable again, this character and all this stuff. And he wins and he makes it through. Instead, he was like the end point, but most of the story of the match was Javon Evans, which was kind of weird.
Yeah, that's how it felt to me as well. There's a lot we can say about Trick Williams, Carmelo Hayes. The match I thought was really good, but talk to me about the fur belted United States Championship.
I like it. I agree with you. I don't like it calling a legacy belt in kayfabe, but I think that's a weird thing to do. But I like it. It fits. It makes me think he's going to keep holding this belt for a while, which would be good.
The whole idea with like Liliati as the manager and the title and the way they're presenting Trick, it is not what I ever would have expected for his main roster call-up. It's working incredibly well. The only part about Trick Williams that is not living up to expectations, although the expectations for that even were low, is the in-ring. Like, Trick Shot's a bad finisher. He's not a great wrestler. There have been others who have overcome that, throughout their careers. It just kind of falls apart once the bell rings with him.
Yeah, I think it's okay. It's not bad. I don't mind the Trick Shot as much as you do. I know it's a very simple kind of nothing move. It does just kind of pop though. him going into the air. It's kind of an explosive move. So I get it. But everything else with Trick, it's working so far.
Baron Corbin not only returning to WWE, doing so to end this match, and in 2026 vintage, receiving holy shit chants from the crowd.
I did a story during the World Cup about a Swedish player who is a literal baron. Like he's from a noble family, and his title is the equivalent of a baron in Sweden. And I thought about Baron Corbin
Not a constable.
when I was writing that.
He's not a constable. He's
No,
a baron.
not a constable. We do have constables here in Texas, though. I see it on the cop cars sometimes.
It's funny.
On the road, so those exist as well. I think Corbin is a really, really solid hand, like a big guy who can do a lot of things, worth having in the company. Does that mean throwing him into the middle of your Trick Williams
Carmelo Hayes
Mellow feud? Probably not. I think they always leaned into the wrong parts of Baron Corbin, which is his talking and the character and the luck stuff. Like they always made the wrong decision with him, but the physical talent is still there
for sure. Maxine Dupree proving that she is a true see you next Tuesday, helping Austin Theory, completely turning on Alpha Academy, joining the Vision. The entirety of that segment, plus Paul Heyman later saying, "What do you need me for? You have Maxine."
It works. It makes sense. It needed to be addressed. I did notice the crowd when Otis and Maxine got face to face. The crowd started chanting, "Whoop that trick." I don't know about that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's weird.
But the segment overall made sense. It's good. Now, you made the point too, but Otis still gets over. Like, people love Otis. Alpha Babes has been dead for years, yet Otis is still he's a physically interesting dude. You could find something else to do with him. Please don't call them the Alpha Babes anymore. The music, I don't know. Just move Otis onto something. He's still got something.
That's a good point. If this is going to be the feud, like if they are going to get a tag team title match, whether it's at SummerSlam or the Go Home Raw, the Raw after, whatever the case might be, repackage them as just Otis and Tozawa, or give them a different type of name, different theme, the whole 9 yards. Otis, he's never going to look intimidating because he's basically a bowling ball. I said it about his hair 2 weeks in a row. Like, it is, there's a subreddit. I don't know how many of you use Reddit, but I think it's like R bald, or like it's people thinking about cutting their hair, whatever the case might be. And people post pictures, and then everyone else in the community encourages them to shave their head. Otis needs to post in that community. Like, he is hanging on to strands of hair that, like, Baron Corbin before he shaved his head, or other people before they shaved their head.
I was going to say, though, Corbin, he's not been the same since he lost the hair.
Well, yeah, but that was Corbin in NXT with the hair. The hair wasn't the reason why everything changed. It was just terrible booking from Vince McMahon.
No,
but Otis is such a lost cause hairline wise, meaning he's even worse than Corbin was. He's even worse than other people were who shaved their heads. It's got to go.
His hair has not bothered me because of just his overall look and stature. Like, that hair makes sense for that build.
Oh, God,
it did look a little bit weirder on Corbin as like a taller, thinner guy.
Yeah. All right. And then lastly here, and there may be other things that you want to say, but lastly, for my prompting of you, Io Sky getting just the shit kicked out of her by Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, and Roxanne Perez on the back of that really solid match with Liv and Roxy. To recall everyone, or remind everyone, I should say, I believe this is really heading in the right direction. And even though Liv has been ice cold because she hasn't defended the title, fans love Io so much, and Liv is such a dastardly heel. And Judgment Day has that numbers advantage where, of course, Io doesn't have Asuka, doesn't even more obviously have Kairi Sane. It's working for me. I think this is being built extremely strong for SummerSlam. Can't say anything about that on the SmackDown side. But do you feel the same way, or do you think it's still kind of weak?
I mean, I think it's being built up as well as it can, considering you're doing a rematch you just did. I think Io and Liv and everybody's doing what they can. I think the booking to get into it in the first place was the problem, and is still a little bit of a problem for me, but the crowd's reacting, so it's working to an extent.
Is there anything I did not touch on that does not involve CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Gunther, Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, Bayley, Lyra Valkyria, Paige Brie Bella, Fatal Influence, Danhausen, or JD McDonough that you want to mention from Raw or SmackDown?
Jimmy Uso's, I forgot to say this, but Jimmy Uso's spear is far worse than a Jey Uso spear. It may be the worst one we've ever seen. So
I think it's equally bad. Come on.
It was rough. Trying to see what else I have on here. I think my last thought overall, and this may be a thought I have kind of going into SummerSlam unless things change a bit. Oh no, one more. On the IC title match, Rusev again reminds us how incredibly just foundationally solid he is at this. His selling against Javon Evans and everybody else in this match was so good. Like, he is so good at selling and making other people look good when he is already an incredibly good-looking, physically imposing-looking dude. Just a guy you need in your wrestling company. And I'd love for him to get more. I'd love for him to get some wins now and then, which he did a little bit here. But it's just like, man, this guy's really good at professional wrestling.
It's a great call. Sorry, I thought
he became the anchor of that match.
I was going to say, it's a great call. Something I did not say. He was the MVP of that gauntlet. Not even a question. Javon got all the flash. Dragon was a great foil for Javon during their, segment in the middle there. But Rusev was the clear MVP, from the moment he got into the ring all the way through the post-match. That was a Rusev-led story, utilizing Javon and Chad Gable on other ends of it. As big baby faces, one coming close but not able to overcome him, and of course the other finally doing so. So no,
he's a guy you could plug in anywhere and make something out of it. Give him a world title shot at some point. Like, just he's been in this IC circle for a while, and really a lot of these WWE people have just kind of been in their same silo for too long a period of time. Move guys around a bit more. I think he's a guy who could work well in a one-off anywhere. Remember when we were going to get Rusev Obafemi? We were fired up about the potential of that.
Yeah.
And they did. And it was like a 5-minute match.
So disappointing.
I think I gave it an ugly. It was one of my worst things of the year. Just a completely blown opportunity not to have an incredible match between those two guys. Run it back after SummerSlam. If Oba's going to win in SummerSlam, give us Oba Rusev again. Make it a long match. Rusev will make Oba look even better, like, just because he's really good at that.
But to clarify, when you're talking about,
we got two big meaty men bumping me tonight.
A long match can be 8, 9, 10 minutes. Like, you just need them to have a real match as opposed to some action and a finish, which is what they got the first time and why you and I were so disappointed. But for people who look at Rusev and they go, oh, this guy's such a hypocrite. He refused to lose matches and take falls in AEW, but he's willing to do it in WWE. The guy has been a difference maker for this mid card. You just don't recognize it because he's not winning and standing tall and say, I want a title match, and then getting one and then winning the title. Just because he's not doing those things doesn't mean he's not valuable. WWE found someone who's a legitimate heel, who's a believable person who can be a champion or a challenger at any given time. And when he loses matches, it doesn't impact him because of the way he's booked prior to the fall. He dominates those matches. And that is why he's been kicking ass, and I'm glad you called that out. You said you had something else before we got into Saturday night's main event? Before you talked about Rusev?
Yeah, it's just kind of a larger theme I felt listening to you on Tuesday, and it doesn't really apply to Saturday night's main event because it's a Saturday night's main event. But WWE creatively is just taking an unbelievable amount of shortcuts, and it's undermining so much of what they're doing. The Punk Cody thing happening with kind of just like zero fanfare. There's just constantly things happening. It's like, why didn't you like take an extra beat and do like one or two more things here? Would have made this hit so much better. Mm-hmm. You went through a lot of them on the Tuesday show. If people haven't listened to you had a good just overall feeling about where WWE's creative is at the moment. But my feeling thinking about it all was just, it's not bad creative. It's just lazy, like, execution.
Right.
You can see on paper, if this person wins and this person fights this person, that makes sense. It's not like they're just throwing random stuff out there, but they're not putting in the little bit of extra work that could make a lot of these things go from like a B to an A minus or like a C to a B plus.
Mm-hmm.
And those margins like are often the difference.
You and I
with the SummerSlam attendance, what it is right now, and the talk about creative is just like you can't be cutting these little shortcuts here.
You and I exist in this world, so it's a fair comparison. But it's like allowing writers to self-publish their content and not having editors there to not just do a grammar check and a spelling check, but potentially rearrange their words, the order of their storytelling, ensuring the right headline and the right photo is put on the article. That way, when someone opens it, they're presented with something that they are able to soak in totality as a really high quality piece of content, as opposed to just being words on a page. And that is the way WWE has felt, especially the last few weeks, but in 2026, large parts of 2026, where it's like someone does the creative work. There's an outlined plan on the whiteboard, which I'm sure we'll see on WWE Unreal when season 3 or whatever comes out in August. But the outline is fine. And considering the injuries and changes that they've had to make, pivots they've needed to make, understandable that some things are not as fully fleshed out as they otherwise would be. But so they have the outline. And then they say, okay, you guys put together the copy, the stuff in the middle. And then no one checks it. And they don't have someone they should. I've said that WWE needs a showrunner for a decade at this point, and they've needed it. They've needed it for decades, but I've been saying it for a decade. It's like they don't have a showrunner. Now I'm switching over to a comparison to a television show, where they look at what is delivered and they say, that makes sense. This is illogical. You guys need to fill that in somehow. Bring it back to me. This makes sense. This does not make any sense. Rewrite this, figure out another way to do it. There's no one doing that right now. And I don't understand why, considering how large of a staff they have. And it's way worse on SmackDown than it is Raw, as we know.
And actually, here's where it does tie into Saturday Night's Main Event, as we'll move into this.
Yeah.
They're doing too many shows.
Yeah.
They have for the last couple of years, Triple H takes over. We get into WrestleMania 40 and we come out of 40 thinking like, look, it's a new era. Cody's the champ. All like we're moving forward. And since then, and since the sale and everything, we're just getting so many more shows, Saturday Night Main Events here and there. And Triple H has alluded to it on Unreal about how the creative expectations change when you have more shows to hit and you're doing things every 3 weeks instead of every 4 or 5. And you end up having to take those shortcuts because you got to get to the next major show you got to promote. And you don't end up being able to put the time into the stories. And I think it stems from that, from the company wanting to just kind of basically oversaturate everything, which also leads to less interest in SummerSlam, too many shows. And I think it all comes back to that, basically, is that they don't have the time to do that.
You're 1,000% right. It was a much bigger issue in 2025 where the oversaturation, I'm trying to think of another word, but it reached a saturation point. Like they couldn't have done more shows than they did in 2025. I believe I don't know if I even said this on Tuesday's show or if I thought it or wrote it down somewhere. They're on pace to do 5 fewer specials in 2026 compared to 2025, where you'll remember the summer and fall was inundated with constant shows. There was one point where like they did 6 specials in 8 weeks and it was crazy.
Yeah.
So they are doing less than they were last year, but they're still doing more than they should be. And they're making huge mistakes. And there's reasons for it. I'm going to talk about it right now. Doing a Saturday Night's Main Event the week before a major PLE, 2 weeks before a major PLE. You're now needing to book for a show that shouldn't even exist while you're simultaneously building to your second or third biggest show of the entire year. By the way, a 2-night premium live event that you're trying to sell tickets for. And in this iteration in Minnesota, failing to sell tickets for. Let's move into the WWE Saturday Night's Main Event preview, since you were kind of bringing us there anyway. And the first thing I want to say about it is that this is an extremely, somewhat insanely weak card when you remember it is being held inside Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena. I would have to go digging. It's probably the weakest WWE has ever put on in this arena, perhaps outside of its low points back in the 90s. There's only one championship match involving a title that has been defended more than any other since WrestleMania, so there's nothing special about it being defended. A 5-day booking, a fairly star-studded tag team main event, to be fair, a segment booked as an appearance, and then a half-comedy stipulation match that's going to be full of shenanigans. What's so strange is that part of the reason this show is running on this date in this location is WWE's partnership with Fanatics, which is holding Fanatics Fest all weekend in New York City. Did they assume that simply because sports fans are going to be in the area, spending, by the way, absurd amounts of money to go to that event, which if you asked me to pontificate about Fanatics Fest, we would be here for 2 hours. But because they're going to that, they would do the same to go to a wrestling show inside Madison Square Garden, which is one of the more expensive non-PLE tickets that WWE has in a given year. I cannot imagine they are anywhere close to a sellout based on the card, the time of year, it being so close to SummerSlam. So is the goal simply to support Fanatics with an event and say, who cares what the card looks like? Because
it has to be.
If that's the case, which it should be based on what you just said, I don't get it.
I don't get it. I'm sorry. I don't get it.
I think it's actually encouraging that the Saturday Night's main event card is kind of a joke, because it has to be, because they have to make SummerSlam work. They have to save as many big things as they can for the show, which, as you said, is not selling well so far. Now, maybe, again, post-World Cup, everybody kind of wakes up and returns back to other things, returns back to wrestling, realizes SummerSlam's a few weeks away and they want to go. I'm sure that'll help. But they can't throw anything else on this Saturday Night's main event because they need it for SummerSlam because it's only a few weeks away. So they seem to recognize that. And yes, this show does feel like we're just doing this for Fanatics.
All right, let's go through every match on the card. Vintage will give any takes that he has on, build from television this week that, of course, he didn't get to share on Tuesday, which I did. And then, of course, we'll give you a prediction for every match. Danhausen against JD McDonough. I believe this was made a no disqualification match on social media coming out of Raw. I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure they added that stipulation. Vintage, it was really just Danhausen getting involved in Dominic Mysterio's portion of the gauntlet. That was the go-home. So did you have anything else from this?
No, it was a weird interruption. I don't think it was the wrong turnbuckle, like you said. Usually his attempts go wrong, but it didn't actually directly impact the. I don't know. It was kind of weird.
All right, Danhausen's winning this match. It's in Madison Square Garden. He's become this, prop to some degree for the Knicks. He's supposed to have a surprise person getting his back, whether that's the Frankenstein monster that he's building or it's just Kit Wilson and Miz. I hope it's other New York Knicks. We're going to talk about one player who has already been announced for the show, but there's others that are on the team that like wrestling or at least are cool with it. Obviously, Josh Hart's a possibility. He might be on vacation. Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, some of the younger, less star players, Miles McBride, Deuce McBride, guys like that.
Mikal Bridges, right?
Yeah, Mikal Bridges is a star, though. I was, going other guys. But yes, Mikal Bridges too. My hope is that Cat comes out, gets Danhausen's back. McDonough and Dominic are scared of him, and then Danhausen wins. Either way, he's getting the win here. I'd be shocked if he didn't. Then he gets his Knicks jersey back as well.
Yes, that is the only thing that is happening here. The only reason it's happening. I think it'd be incredible if JD got the win thanks to Dom cheating and doing something, and like the heat that they would get out of that.
I would hope.
That's something they might have done back in the old days. They probably would have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not really, but zero chance of that happening in today's world where they are 100% doing this to get the crowd, to create the viral moments at ESPN, and everybody will send around. And it'll work, and it'll be fine. I am done with the Knicks.
Also, excuse me, how dare you? Also, we don't know who is or is not at Fanatics Fest. If Tyrese Halliburton is there, possibility he comes out with the heels again.
Tyrese Halliburton interviewed LeBron James, so he is at Fanatics.
So we could get Halliburton and then have Knicks on the other side. This might even come after the Roman Reigns, Jalen Brunson segment, which we'll talk about in a moment. Maybe that happens first, so we know Brunson's the ringside, and then this happens, and we get that. There's a lot of ways this can go. The Knicks of this show is what's pulling me in. I mean, I'd be watching it anyway. You would be as well. You're not a Knicks fan. But The Knicks of this all has me way more excited for this than I otherwise would be based on the card that I'm poo-pooing. I already did poo-poo a little bit, and I'm going to as we continue here. Women's Tag Team Championship, Paige and Brie Bella defending against Fatal Influence. Influence got a promo package talking down the veterans on SmackDown, saying they will be the center of attention in the biggest match of their careers, but it's going to be Paige and Brie who need to reckon with them, not the other way around. Lainey debuted a much improved hairstyle that really lets her stand out. It's like copper red with blonde streaks in front. The promo was fine. I would have preferred it live backstage, but it was sponsored, which is why they did it this way. I don't know which way this match is going to go. As the only title bout on the show, Vintage, they really should do a title change for an exciting moment. And then you have Fatal Influence take the titles into SummerSlam against a variety of women in a multi-team match. That's even perhaps how they could use Tiffany Stratton and Chelsea Green, even do a quick turn title change, get a big pop in Minnesota, and then you move on from there. Nikki Bella seems to be training on her way back. Does she perhaps prevent the title change because she's able to return and then they rematch, or they do a 6-woman match at SummerSlam? I don't know. I'm going to pick the title change because, again, it is the only championship match on the show and they need some type of moment here. I hope Fatal Influence wins. Maybe they won't, and maybe they'll do it again.
We have picked this title change so many times, and it has not happened. And so, because of that, I think we're not going to get the title change. Because I think we'll get a title change, which makes me think we won't get a title change. Mm-hmm. It would make sense. Paige and Brie, they're still your big stars. Carry it into SummerSlam. You won it at Mania. You drop it at SummerSlam. Would make a lot of sense. Unless you think Nikki's back, drop the titles here, throw Brie and Nikki into a multi-tag match at SummerSlam, potentially as well. But I'm going to say Paige and Brie retain yet again and continue the strongest title defense of anybody in WWE right now.
You know what? As I'm thinking this through, because I was really just 50-50 on my pick, I'm actually just going to switch it before we get out of the segment. I'm going to have them retain because Nikki returns to thwart JC Jane's interference. Big pop for Nikki returning. That leads to the 6-woman match. Then after the 6-woman match, they do another tag team title match. That's where Influence wins. So it doesn't happen here, even though it should, because they need something on this show. Bayley versus Lyra Valkyria. Vintage, I was able to discuss this go home segment on Tuesday's show. Did you have any thoughts about what went down here?
Yeah, shout out to Lyra for going just all out on this new character switch. Just like the clothes, the way she talked, her eyes, like she put in the work here. Mm-hmm. And it made me a lot more interested than I would for every other tag team partner turns on the other and then they just yell at each other in the ring thing. Like, remember when Bayley was going through that change with the voices and then it just kind of never happened? Nothing ever changed. No, like Lyra's going for this and I thought she did a really good job here.
It's interesting. I feel like the story there was Lyra pulling Bayley back from the abyss by being her friend, but they never specifically said that was the case. It's just what they showed on screen. And sometimes showing is better than telling, but I don't feel like they showed it enough. It should have been, They did it a couple times where Bayley was about to freak out. So Lyra smacked her, got her back to where she was. And then they were a tag team and they were happy to be partners and Bayley had a friend again. I don't know if that was always the plan or if it was supposed to go deeper and it didn't, but they should have done something to tell us like, yes, what you are seeing now was the end of this character. It was where this was supposed to go, basically.
The only thing I think I would have wanted more from Lyra is to talk about her own failures and not just like them as a team.
Right.
Like, cause we saw the Unreal from the last season, the handcuff stuff, the issues with the SummerSlam match with Becky. Like if Lyra talks about, I was supposed to be this champ, we were supposed to be tag champs and I have failed and now I'm kind of like going crazy. And also she basically turned it all on Bayley in a good way.
Well, she's a heel, so that's okay.
But right. But it's like almost like a more interesting character if it's about her freaking out about her own inability to get back to where she was. So that maybe is kind of too layered and kind of a separate story, but with the way she looks and everything, that would fit it as well. Like she's lost all hope in herself.
What are your thoughts on the look? A little over the top or appropriate for what she's doing?
It's over the top, but that's pro wrestling, baby.
That is exactly right. I'm so glad you said that. Let's go with you. You first. Prediction for this match.
Lyra. I think it makes sense. I don't think it's necessarily it's not the end of the story by any means, because the heel often wins the first if this ends up being multiple of them. So it would give her character more confidence, and she did have a bit of confidence in that promo, and so it would kind of add to that. I go Lyra.
Yeah, she absolutely needs to win. It has to be a do whatever it takes type of victory for Valkyria. I don't think we're going to see Tatum Paxley here. I'm going to stick with my belief that she gets involved in this feud. I believe it will be probably something along the lines of Lyra does dastardly shit. It seems like she's going more and more heel. Tatum shows up maybe Monday night on Raw. Maybe they save it until after SummerSlam and she debuts on the Raw after, but then tries to pull her back again from the abyss like Lyra did for Bayley. And I still truly hope that they become a trio. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but no matter what, Lyra needs to win this first match.
I don't know Lyra as much as you do, but would there be any concern that bringing Tatum Paxley up
Mm-hmm.
to kind of look and do a sort of similar gimmick to a new gimmick Lyra just debuted?
So it's not that similar of a gimmick. I mean, Tatum's issue always was that she wanted to have friends, but no one would actually legitimately be friends with her. And the one person who ultimately relented, Tatum stalked Lyra basically. The one person who relented was Valkyria, who appreciated the friendship and got her to understand that she couldn't stalk her and be all over her. But if she didn't do that, she would actually have a relationship with her. And Tatum called her like my sweet dove and all this type of stuff. And it went from frenemies to legitimate friends to they had to be pulled apart from each other. But Lyra would also show up when Tatum needed her. So while the look is dark in both cases, now the Tatum character on NXT is not only a total babyface, but happy most of the time because she's been able to survive without leaning on someone else. So the concern would be, and I thought this is where you were going, bringing Tatum over and having her either immediately or eventually be so much more popular than Lyra that it stunted Valkyria's growth. But
no,
but I believe
I'm thinking if they come over looking the same.
No, because Tatum's much darker. She's all black, with black eye makeup, and she's more she's more
black
goth.
And blue, but
Lyra's disturbed. Tatum is goth. I'd say that's the difference between the two.
Right.
But if you put them together, I think it would help that both of them so much because they have an incredible chemistry. And then if you bring Bayley in as like the mother hen for both of them, I just think it would work awesome. But I don't know what their plans are, and we will find out in the future.
I also think it's too early for that. Like, she just debuted the new gimmick. I think you got to let that sit in for a bit before you bring up somebody.
And that may be why they wait 3 more weeks until after SummerSlam or even past that. It's going to be interesting to find out. But we're on the same page in terms of Lyra needing to beat Bayley here. Roman Reigns is going to appear with Jalen Brunson. He invited him to the show and Brunson accepted. That's the kayfabe explanation of it. Now, just for context, not only does Brunson love WWE, and while the show was happening, I posted on social media videos of him finally meeting Rhea Ripley, which he said, interestingly, he's like, I would do Fanatics Fest, but the only way I'm going to do it is if you guys put me on the same day as Ripley. Brunson, by the way, is a married man with a child. But no, I think he just is a huge fan of her. But who wouldn't be, of course? Regardless, you've seen him previously. One time in WWE was a random segment. He actually has a handshake with, I believe, one of the team managers for the Knicks, where they shake hands before the start of a game and then they point up, they acknowledge. So I assume that is going to get factored into this in some way. I don't know the exact way, but I don't really understand why this is the booking. Like, the idea of Brunson being in the crowd and doing something cool, the way they utilized him and Halliburton last time in Madison Square Garden was awesome. It was probably one of the best WWE segments of the year. It was definitely the best involvement of celebrities in the last 3 years or so. So with Reigns coming out saying, acknowledge me, and then Brunson acknowledges him, or Reigns acknowledges Brunson and the Knicks, where do you go from there? There's got to be a solid plan. But as of right now, going into the show vintage, I don't know what it could be.
I mean, Seth has to show up, right?
I guess.
Otherwise, what else are you going to do? It's got to turn into some sort of confrontation of some kind. And I don't know.
I don't know that you need Rollins. I don't think you can put Rollins here because he can't be counter Nix. He's a babyface, like.
Right, but what are Roman and Brunson going to do?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's weird.
I don't know.
Yeah, so we'll find out. I know you don't want to talk about the Knicks because you're still crying over your Detroit Pistons not being able to get all the way there. But don't worry, the New York Knicks
because
did.
Detroit native Danhausen didn't curse the Cavs until it was too late.
Yeah, well, that's true. You guys also could have just won that series because, you were the number 1 seed. But that's another conversation for another day. Let's get to the main event. CM Punk and Cody Rhodes against Gunther and Sami Zayn. Let's have you discuss this in 2 parts before we get to actually talking about the match. Vintage, was the Punk Rhodes segment on SmackDown lazy booking or a solid first step for their feud?
Lazy booking. 100%. That was it. Like, you ranted about this. You ranted about a lot of things on Tuesday's show that was all correct. And it goes back to the laziness and the shortcuts and the forgetting of things. Cody Rhodes was the number 1 contender, and he didn't mention that. Like, if you had forgotten what had happened the previous week, you would have just thought he just walked out and got a shot because Punk was kind of offering it to everybody, which, like, Cody should have been like, no, Royce Keys gets this. I get this. I'm the number 1 contender. I want my title back. So yes, that was very, very frustrating for it to be pretty much nothing. Now, a little bit of time. I trust their ability to turn it into something interesting because I think both of those guys
they're too good.
Are really, really, really good at what they do.
Yeah.
But a very boring start.
And then Gunther attacking Aldis, the tag team match being made, not having Zayn on that show because he got a mental health break. Although they said that before they showed the clip from social media. That
I was so confused about that. I was glad you explained it all to me because that was weird with the way that happened. My thoughts, my thoughts on Gunther and everything now.
Yeah. I mean, what did you think about the segment with Aldis? How they did it, the sleeper hold thing, the booking of this match too. The way this went down.
So Gunther wasn't wearing a belt. He was just wearing pants and a tucked in shirt.
Of course, you go to what he's wearing. I'm asking about the storyline and the booking.
I know.
You get into the clothes.
I had to. Aldis, we've complained about the sleeper hold. You did on Tuesday. It's all correct. Aldis sold the sleeper better than anybody has sold it for Gunther.
Interesting.
The windmill arms and stuff as he's going down. Like, where's that been from everybody else? This is a professional wrestler, Nick Magnus Aldis, showing us he's still got it, showing us he knows what professional wrestling is all about. And it got me excited to actually did kind of get me excited to see Magnus versus Gunther at some point. Yes, it would have been more impactful if he did power bomb and the splash and all that kind of stuff. Would have been better. There was one, all the officials come out to save all this and all this stuff. One of them was as big as Gunther. I don't know who it was.
Yeah, that guy was big.
Some wrestler, dude. I was like, who's this guy? He should be fighting Gunther. He's huge. And then Cody comes out to make the save, but he takes his time and he kind of just walked out there for a little bit. So hit and miss.
All right.
Or a belt.
So I would just say my final thought going into this match, it feels like it's missing a stipulation where if the heels win, they get added to the title match at SummerSlam. Ideally,
boom.
If you run that stipulation, the heels would win and get added, but a loss could also rekindle a bit of a Gunther Zayn feud for later down the line and keep Cody Punk fresh for an actual WrestleMania match or a match at another major show that is built better with more time to get there. You give us a taste of Cody and Punk now. You integrate Gunther and Zayn for SummerSlam. Maybe even make that match a little bit more unpredictable considering the title's already changed hands twice in the last couple of weeks. And then again, you push Cody and Punk, the full-fledged feud, for later. Not every major match, by the way, must happen at WrestleMania or SummerSlam. They could run this now, Vintage, and if they wind up doing WrestlePalooza again, and I did inquire to that end, by the way, and I believe the show is happening even though it has not been announced, that's a big, WWE ESPN show. At least that's the way it was presented last time. Make it the main event of WrestlePalooza. That's okay. Have a huge match on a B, premium live event. Make it so it feels like it's not a B premium live event and go with the 4-way here. I don't know if they're going to do it. They have an opportunity this Friday on SmackDown. And because it is only Saturday night's main event, a 24-hour stipulation is completely fine. I'm guessing they don't do it vintage. What do you think of that concept? What do you think of going with a 4-way at SummerSlam?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I do think if Aldis had given them that stipulation, Gunther then doesn't need to attack Aldis. So that probably is like, does it kind of messes that up other
well no
there. So you need all
let me correct you, because Aldis, literally while we're taping the show, it was announced that Nick Aldis will not be the general manager of SmackDown this Friday. Adam Pearce is back because Aldis is out of action. So does that change it for you?
No, I'm saying in the moment, giving Gunther that stipulation, hey, if you win this tag match, you get your title shot back. I don't think Gunther would then want to attack Aldis again because he kind of got what he wanted. So,
but it wouldn't be Aldis giving it to him. It would be Pearce in this case.
No, I'm saying last week because he attacked him.
Oh, yes. If they did the stipulation there, you're saying. Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. So you had to do that stipulation. So
you would have to
Gunther
hold it
would be mad
for this
without the stipulation. So Gunther would be mad.
Right.
And go after Aldis. And if Pearce now throws that on here, you kind of rewarded Gunther for attacking the management, which you probably don't want to do either. Frankly, Gunther should be suspended.
Of course he should be.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
Anyway,
he shouldn't be wrestling anywhere. He shouldn't be getting anything. He should be out for like a month. He's attacked this guy 2 times. Yeah. The first time, by the way, was arguing and pushing and cursing, which, whatever. He beat the shit out of him this time. How is he wrestling at Saturday night's main event, and how is he not suspended? That needs to get explained Friday on SmackDown. That's a great point. But I believe they can have Pearce, make the stipulation, add it, and without Aldis knowing.
But why would he add it?
Because he's angry at Aldis. They've been going back and forth for the last 3 weeks now.
Yeah, but if I'm Triple H or something, I'm pretty mad at the GM for rewarding that. I don't. It would make sense in terms of creating fun stakes for the match. 100%, I agree.
Yeah.
But if you're also trying to tell the story of Gunther being pissed off at all this, I don't know.
To the point,
we'll see.
Though,
it could.
To the point, though, okay, if they did do that match and they ran the 4-way at SummerSlam and they pushed off Cody Punk, I'm just saying WrestlePalooza, let's just make believe, right? What happened at WrestlePalooza last year? I could be wrong. Was it not Gunther and Pat McAfee on that show? Or was that a different PLE?
Gunther, Pat McAfee, I think was a Backlash.
Okay, it was a Backlash. Well, you could do Gunther and Aldis on that show, because as much as you and I are into Gunther and Aldis, I think it is fair to say that it's not really a SummerSlam match. I mean, it'll be good. They've built it perfectly.
Yeah.
But you could push it off.
Once Magnus walks out and he looks like you're going to get that reaction that like Vince McMahon got when he came out the first time, all like, muscled and oiled up.
Yeah.
You're going to go, whoa, where has this guy been my whole life? Then you're gonna feel it. I think I don't know. It is weird to do a Gunther gimmick match at SummerSlam if that's what they're doing. We don't know if for sure that's what they're doing. When he is the guy who retired John Cena, beat Seth at Mania, retired AJ Styles, why is he in this position? It's because they wanted to do Cody Punk and they wanted to run the Mania main events here. So we're doing that and got to figure out something else for Gunther. We're going to give him the Drew McIntyre bit of fighting the GM, I guess.
Sure looks like it. So my prediction for this is if there is no stipulation added, Punk and Rhodes win. Really simple. I don't know why you would have the champion and his chief challenger lose 2 weeks before SummerSlam. If the stipulation does get added, which we're kind of making up out of thin air here, then I would pick Gunther and Zayn. Simple as that.
Punk and Cody are winning no matter what stipulation is or is not, because you want to build both of these guys going into their match at SummerSlam. It is definitely, I think, better in WWE's eyes to have these two on the marquee instead of a 4-way. And the loss will create the Gunther-Sammy further split, which they may want to continue in some form in a story. Now, Gunther Sammy at Mania, at SummerSlam would make a lot of sense, but we're not going there either. So Sammy takes the pin here, and we say, what the heck happened these last couple of weeks?
I can't see that match happening, especially because I think I said on Tuesday, if Sammy does get a title match at WrestleMania, unless he is the Money in the Bank holder, which I do believe is a legitimate booking possibility. Gunther as champion makes so much sense for him to be the one to face. And you wouldn't want to run that again at SummerSlam and then run it back with Sammy winning the title at WrestleMania. So we'll see what happens. But I think, look, I forgot the final part of our previewing, even though it's not the ultimate preview. Technically it was. We spoke about it for so long. Our pre-show expectation grade. You had the dog barking in the back. I always let you go first, so I'll go first this time, and then I'll allow you to go in once the dog has calmed down. Our expectation grade for Saturday night's main event inside Madison Square Garden. Now, I'm just going to be 100% clear and honest. There is bias involved here. As a Knicks fan, I am more excited for this show than Vintage, and while I think the card is dreadfully thin, the Knicks aspect of it has my expectation higher than it otherwise would be. So I'm going to say an 87 out of 100, a B+. I think it's going to be a fine show that is buoyed by Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks. If it wasn't for that, I would probably be at least a letter grade or a half letter grade, lower. Vintage, what is your expectation grade for Saturday night's main event?
That's high, even unbiased. I'm giving this like a C.
Oh, wow.
Like, we have to stretch the range sometimes, and like there's just almost nothing here. Like the tag team match, the main event is fine, but there's, as of now, no stakes. It doesn't really mean anything. Honestly, Bayley versus Lyra is probably the thing I'm looking forward to the most. And the women's tag is like, sure, but not like super into it at the moment. And then Danhausen JD is just going to be a bit. We have 3 real matches on a show. And I know, you or some people don't want to compare it to pay-per-views or whatever, but
you can't.
It's what we grade. We have to. These are the only things that we grade is
but
pay-per-view or pay-per-view equivalents.
I mean, that's true, but I don't compare my TV special grades to PLE grades. At least that's the way I do it. Like if this was a PLE card, it would not be getting an 87, even with the Knicks bias. I'm just saying.
It's on Peacock. It's not on TV. It's a PLE. It's what it is. It's a bad PLE, but it's a PLE.
I disagree with that completely.
So I'm gonna go with a C because it's just like, okay, I get, like, if this was a Raw card, you'd be like, so like that's what I got. And again, as I said, it's okay that this card is not great because we have SummerSlam coming up. This show shouldn't exist, but it does. And so we're going to have to do it because Micah Rubin and Fanatics need everybody to show up in New York.
Yeah. So let's go with 86 for you? Or sorry, 76 for you?
Yeah, 76. Sure.
All right, so I'm at an 87. You're at a 76. And you know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be
90. It's coming.
No. I was going to say it's going to be exactly in the middle. Like it's going to be, what would that be? Like an 82 or something like that? 81?
Yeah.
It'll probably be something like that. We'll find out on Saturday. We will be back, of course, with your Saturday night's main event analysis as soon as this show goes off the air. Make sure, of course, to watch and make sure to listen to us because we will be back after that on Tuesday with your normal WWE episode. Vintage, thanks for taking the time and joining us. Longest Thursday show possibly ever here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. All right, lots of show left. Before we get to all of it, Silver King does need to remind you here at Getting Over,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. For $5 a month, $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions whenever a major wrestling TV show does something that requires an instant reaction, along with news, analysis posts, and editorials every week. Sign up, get additional content, expand your knowledge of the world of professional wrestling, learn something, and of course, support the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Please visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. All right, let's get into everything that happened this week across NXT and AEW. As always, there are timestamps in the episode description, so you can skip around if you so choose, but I do hope you listen to the entire show. Kicking it off with NXT, the main event of the show was Lola Vice, Callie Armstrong, and Kalani Jordan in a number 1 contendership for the NXT title, an opportunity, of course, for the NXT title. Lola confronted Kendall Gray backstage for about, 10 seconds, reminding that she's not done with her or the championship. We know, you said as much last week, and you're in a match toward that end. Ren Sinclair later asked Kendall who she wants to face, but as they were commiserating about that, Callie got in her face, wanting to get her lick back from losing the Evolve title to her months ago. It was much better from Armstrong than what she did last week, felt way more natural. Jordan was again a full second off on her clapping ring entrance because what else is new? And for some reason, they refused to get that right. Nothing at all against Callie. She was dragging this match down, just given her massive skill differential compared to Lonnie and Lola. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about that. It's experience, but I mean, it changed the course of the match. Vice went on a barrage of hip attacks only to get caught by Armstrong for a spinebuster. Jordan landed a nice spinning, draping leg drop, but Vice countered one of a kind with a catch triangle choke. The referee stared at Lola's shoulders down on the canvas as Lonnie tried to escape, but he just didn't count. Jordan rolled through an Armstrong powerbomb, but took a basement missile dropkick from Vice before a series of counters on the canvas. Lonnie then broke an armbar with a frog splash on Lola. Vice got pounced to hell with Callie connection, and then Jordan got screwed by the referee after an extended counter sequence where she clearly had Armstrong's shoulders down for a good 3.5 seconds, and the crowd let him have it. This guy was not good in the match. Horrendous, actually. There was a really cool front flip escape by Jordan at one point during that sequence, the counter sequence. Lonnie then ducked a back fist from Lola, which nailed Callie in the face. Jordan immediately took out Vice with a handspring back elbow, following with a 450 on Armstrong, only to get her head kicked off her body by Vice, who covered falling and leaning backwards over Armstrong for the 1-2-3. And man, the way she twisted her body while rolling over after the cover. Folks, if you were watching this live, I know you were saying, "Hola, Lola."
I'd be trying to get it in as much as possible, too.
Outside of the botch by Callie and the referee, the finish was excellent. I'm shocked at the winner, though. This felt like the perfect opportunity for Lonnie to finally get her NXT title opportunity, so that way she could stop complaining. Now, perhaps the idea is to hold that off until NXT Heatwave, and perhaps this will be a write-off for Lola, who should lose to Kendall in a second meeting and have nothing else left to do in NXT on the back end. Jordan is going to remain insufferable, both in kayfabe and reality, having lost this match. And it's going to be a tough sell for creative to keep her involved in something meaningful without simply being an annoying complainer like she has been for the last few months. You got to believe the idea is that when she finally fights for the title, she wins it as a heel. That would be a nice way to give Kendall a short run, take it off of her, and then have her level back up to beat Jordan, win the title, and presumably send Lonnie to the main roster on the back end. But even as someone who appreciates Lonnie's talent, despite believing she's still not ready for prime time, it's incredibly frustrating seeing her get passed over time and again just to get an opportunity. That's why there must be some deeper creative plan behind this. As I said at the opening, Armstrong's lack of experience dragged this down. I don't mean that to say it was a mediocre match. It was quite good, at least a B+, but it would have been excellent without her. The question just is going to be, what is Lonnie going to do between now and when she actually earns the number one contendership? Because if it's just her coming back week after week and complaining that she's not the number one contender, that she's never gotten one of these chances, that's just not good enough. She's already been doing it for a few months. Naraku fought Tate Wilder. Naraku basically toyed with Wilder, stopping cold all the bullshit he tried before winning with Enter the Abyss. Vic Joseph, during the match, claimed that falling from the top turnbuckle was a 20-foot drop, and I don't even know what to say about that. It's maybe 10 feet, half of that, I guess. Tony D'Angelo attacked after the bell. He landed a few shots as security tried to separate them. Naraku went for the red mist, but Tony deducked with a security guard taking a face full of it, and then as the brawl was still happening in the ring, NXT just cut away from it and went to commercial, which was completely idiotic. If your primary champion and his chief challenger are going at each other being separated, how do you, as a kayfabe director in the truck, think, yeah, guys, perfect time to go to break. We don't need to stay with any of this. Nothing developed or changed here. It felt like a waste of time for a feud that should have already seen a title change. Now D'Angelo's healthier and he's just going to dominate him further. Besides that, as I've said before, nothing about Wilder as he is currently presented makes a shred of sense. I'm not going to go into the details of that. It's already a long episode. You've heard me say it before if you're a longtime listener. If not, just tune in next week. D'Angelo later barged into Robert Stone's office complaining about Naraku and how NXT officials pulled him off a guy who burned his face and tried to take out his eye. And yeah, Tony, that's completely fair. Stone said he was just trying to protect Tony D, so he didn't take it to the streets. He decided to book a rematch for the title on TV next week, which D'Angelo accepted, though he wanted to get hands on him sooner than that. Before NXT ended, D'Angelo was shown attacking Naraku in the parking lot, with Stone declaring the match would be contested under a street fight stipulation. Now, that allowed me to change my primary comment here, which was wondering how the hell he booked this match with no stipulation initially. Street fight is solid enough considering the limitations of NXT. A steel cage or fight pit or something a little bit more unique would have been cooler, but going with the street fight, it does allow the potential for outside interference or for Naraku to do something dastardly that gives him the opportunity to win the title. You wonder, considering the feud was already so hot, if they could have just made the first match a street fight and then done whatever they were going to do here on the larger show. But you know what? It is a good reason to tune into television next week. And perhaps this is where we see Hiromu Takahashi, appear and join Naraku, or maybe he's just going to be something completely different and we're conflating them for no reason whatsoever. Layla Diggs suffered an injury at an NXT live event over the weekend, and therefore she was unable to fulfill her spot in the North American Championship match for the opportunity that she earned last week. Natty led her crew into Stone's office, demanding the number one contendership remain in the group, suggesting Nikita Lyons get the spot. Izzy, Dame, and Lizzie Rain were both there too, each making their own cases. Stone ultimately decided to do a four-way with all three as challengers. Unfortunate timing for Diggs. Frankly, I'd have been more interested in just seeing like Carmen Petrovic get the chance if she was allowed to have a real match and flash against the champions. Unfortunately, despite what Petrovic is doing in AAA, WWE just had her lose to Jada Parker relatively easy for no reason like a week or two ago. So she was not a consideration here. North American Championship, Zarya defending against Izzy, Lizzie, and Nikita. This was a bullshit booking for Zarya, of course, just going from one neophyte challenger to three comparative veterans, where she could then lose the title without factoring into the finish because it was a four-way. That was not addressed. And fair enough, given the plans change situation, but it didn't feel fair for the champion. I'm not sure if I missed this previously. I must have, but a picture of the title belt was on the big screen directly across from the hard cam during this match, and it was ridiculously distracting. I much preferred when it was the light up NXT or some version of that. Rain did a trap German suplex on Dame and a perfect spinebuster on Lyons before taking down Zarya with a tornado DDT off Dame's chest. Nikita broke a cover with a split after Lizzie tagged Izzy with a cutter. Then Lyons executed an effing Pearl River plunge, which I would never have guessed in a million years she would be able to do. So credit where it's due there. And if you've never heard me say this before, the Pearl River plunge is my favorite finisher in professional wrestling. And I hate that there is not someone in WWE using it as an actual finisher. The fact that it was a move in the middle of this match was ridiculous. There were more fun combo spots here. Zarya caught Lyons trying a Vader bomb, but instead of an F5, she got drop kicked by Dame, so it turned into a Samoan drop. Rain took a backstabber and chokeslam from Dame. There was a super inventive spot where Nikita and Lizzie were hanging over the ropes, so Zarya ran into the ropes, bouncing each of them onto their feet before continuing to run and taking them down with a clothesline and then an anti-air German suplex off a springboard. Zarya ultimately no-sold a codebreaker from Dame, spearing her for a false finish. That brought Natty and Petrovic down as Lizzie and Izzy brawled out of the ringside area. Jada Parker saved Zarya from getting attacked ringside, and she hit a spear and F5 on Nikita for the win. Vic randomly shouts Zone of Destruction during her big moves, and I cannot tell if Zone of Destruction is the name of her spear, the name of her F5, or just what he says when she gets into her finishing sequence. It's very weird, and I've been confused about this for a long time. Now, this exceeded every possible expectation I had for it as a match. Nikita has improved so markedly, she must have spent 9 months straight doing nothing but training and working out. It is legitimately crazy to see her transform that much, where yes, okay, she was still the fourth best in the match, but she was not at all out of place. As I said last week, The chemistry between Lizzie and Izzy is exceptional. The booking made sense to move them out of the picture and have Lyons take the fall for Zarya. And it could even give her the opportunity to go through the other women in the faction one by one. I shit you not, this was on its way to being a potential A match. The interference and the absence of half the competitors dropped it in the final minutes, but I'm at 4 stars A-. Delightful work with some cool-ass spots, a lot of fun had by the live crowd. No doubt the match of the night in NXT. Later backstage, after Callie had a conversation with Kendall, she had come across Jada, who gave her a major stink eye when Armstrong exited. Natty, Nikita, and Carmen attacked her from behind, throwing Parker into the road case. Nothing else happened there, but Jada continuing to be on the wrong side of the heels should lead her to grab backup, you would think. Why she has not already done that to this point is somewhat confusing. It's going to be Jada against Natty in a rematch next week, which again seems too soon based on the story everyone thought they were telling, that Parker was going to hit rock bottom and then build her way up either on her own or with Natty and then turn on her at the end. They're just going right to it, and maybe they're rushing it for a reason. They had to cut out, maybe they had like an 8-week storyline planned and they had to cut out 3 weeks for some reason, but it just doesn't feel like it's going as it was supposed to. Tag Team Championship was on the line. Vanity Project defending against Sean Legacy and Dorian Van Dukes. The challengers did a variation of the Cruz del Toro springboard launch spot. DVD was tremendous on the hot tag, but he ate a ripcord single leg code breaker from Brad Baylor to stifle his momentum. He came back with a huge superplex plus a falling splash, tagging Legacy in for a springboard 450 broken fall. The Faces hit a standing Spanish fly, blue thunderbomb, and 3 topes, but Jackson Drake distracted the referee, allowing Micah Lockwood to pull down the top rope and prevent a 4th tope. Vanity took advantage by throwing Legacy into the steel steps and hitting the tandem double stomp inverted DDT, which needs a name, to retain the titles. Unfortunate interference end to an incredible match. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Van Dukes is the truth, and that's not taking anything away from Legacy, who is great in his own right. I would like to see this get rematched with the title changing hands at some point in the future. It can be months down the line, that's fine. Let Vanity go through the rest of the division, which is incredibly thin, but Legacy and Van Dukes, they should be champions at some point. They're not the next Phyraxium. That's not fair to say, because Phyraxium is one of the best tag teams we've gotten over the last decade, and that's actually facts. But they're the latest incarnation of that type of team in NXT. It's probably the best way I can say it. Grade-wise, between 3.75 stars, B+, 4 stars, A-. It did bump up against that women's 4-way for match of the night. No question about it. Miles Bourne and Tavian Heights got hyped backstage about taking down Vanity Project, specifically Drake, who Tavian was set to face. Heights tried to get Bourne to go after the tag team titles with him, but of course Miles wasn't having it. Cam Hendricks then came through, reminding Bourne that he pinned him in his NXT debut match, saying he wanted to come after the North American title, even though he previously chose to challenge D'Angelo instead. It would be utterly ridiculous for Hendricks to receive another title match without doing anything to earn it, considering he chose on his own accord to challenge D'Angelo instead of Bourne initially. Beyond not liking him and believing he's far too green to be on NXT, he should still be in Evolve, his booking has been trash, totally overbooked, over-featured, without doing anything as a character to deserve it at all. Heights fought Drake. Heights responded to a handspring cutter with a Northern Lights suplex bridge. He also hit an awesome Gotch powerbomb at one point. Should be a finisher. Tavian got his foot caught between the ropes, giving Jackson an opening for a dragon screw and most of an Indian deathlock, attacking the knee. Heights reversed a figure 4 leg lock, following with a gut-wrench suplex and spinning F5 before catch suplexing Drake out of the ring into his mates. A distraction from Baylor provided just enough of an opening for Jackson to counter Tavian's finisher, rolling him down into a sunset flip cover with some pressure on the chest for the win. Drake had to win as the presumptive challenger for Bourne and potentially even the next North American champion. Heights had to lose for a similar reason. He already got a shot, lost, and is now almost certainly turning heel on his former partner sooner than later, one would think. Tavian badly needs a refresh. As we've said previously, this should be the entree to that. Strong work between these guys as expected. Not much else to say about the match, though. It was relatively cut and dry, and Heights is just in this zone right now where nothing he's doing is working, kind of like D'Angelo, and they really just need to blow it up and try something else. Out the Mud backstage confronted Saquon Sugars as he was considering asking Legacy and Van Dukes to partner with him against Dark State. They acted as if they might be down, but flipped it on Sugars considering that he was part of the faction previously and made their lives hell without repenting. Look at that. Wrestlers with memory and backbones. Then they came across Birthright, who tried to wedge drive by mentioning Brock O'Neill going off to AAA, suggesting Nima is more focused on his family than working with Lucian Price. Charlie Dempsey was not around for this, by the way. But it was a pretty strong segment, weaving a couple storylines together while keeping up the AAA storyline, even if they did not get into detail about it. And they did precisely what we said last week regarding Sugars, not accepting the most obvious ask, which would have been OTM. Saquon later found Ren QCC, who agreed with the guys that Sugars has not done anything to prove he deserves friends. Ren Sinclair offered him a spot in their stable, though that would not help, of course, against Dark State. And this was a completely unfair tease for the Silver King, as I thought for 5 seconds, holy shit, the best acts in NXT could actually come together as one. Sugars with Sinclair and Kendall would be like the most random and awesome trio that you could ask for on that brand right now. Saquon even got excited at the prospect of celebrating victories with cake because, Sugars. So much personality between these three. They are carrying the roster on their back in that way right now. Saquon then came across Noam Dar and Romeo Moreno, who said he's hard to trust given his past. Sugar suggested they get his back, and while Dar was immediately against it, Moreno fully embraced the opportunity, given Dark State are former champions, and it's a great chance for them to learn how to work together as a team. Noam ultimately relented, and all three guys dapped up. I never would have guessed this combination, this trio, but it could be pretty fun, and it creates an easy way for Dark State to win by pinning Romeo. Plus, it was explained how Sugars ultimately found partners when last week, when you looked at the division, you were like, why would any of these guys want to give him an opportunity? Reino Volcan got another promo package saying nature doesn't ask for permission, apologize, or care who gets swept away, and neither does she, the first Dominican superstar in WWE. She said her beauty should not be mistaken for weakness. She wasn't born to meet expectations, but destroy them, and we will remember her name because she's one of one, someone who doesn't compromise. Volcan also said NXT will not survive her, but suffer her, and she's making her in-ring debut next week. As I said before, the presentation has been completely on point so far. The name is great. The look is great. Her accent shines through when she speaks. As far as her being the first Dominican superstar, that was No Way Jose. And I will not stand on this podcast for No Way Jose erasure. Hank, Tank, and EK Prosper were all backstage complaining about the existence of Keanu Carver. Hank decided it was his turn to go after Carver next week. Sugars confronted the trio, suggesting they get his back against Dark State, but like OTM, they had no interest in doing so until he proves that he's changed. Saquon hysterically tried to get them on his side by saying honk honk a few times. They denied him. It was actually the most serious Hank and Tank have been since getting together, and for the first time, they were actually somewhat interesting, even if my general take on them as a tag team remains the same. And I'm now realizing I did that completely out of order. That should have been with the Ren QCC, Noam Dar, and Romeo Moreno segment, but okay. Regardless, that also happened on the show. So Sugars went through OTM, Ren QCC, kind of. And then, of course, these guys, Hank and Tank, before ultimately settling on Noam and Romeo. And that's a much longer story that they told on the show. It wasn't just one and done. Tristan Angels hit the ring, holding Shiloh Hill's tooth retainer in a white glove, demanding an apology while calling him a creepy hillbilly weirdo who is not fit to be in the squared circle with him. Instead, he stomped the retainer into pieces as Hill appeared on the Titantron, saying losing the tooth helped his mind. He can always fix his smile. Then he yelled, "The fog is coming," and started laughing manically as smoke filled the stage and the segment just ended. This shit was horrific, man. What the hell are they doing? It is 2 steps forward, 1 step back with Hill, and it has been for months. The guy who has fun working with Tatum Paxley and getting under the skin of heels, that guy's great. This weirdo version who has some supernatural abilities or whatever the hell is going on, it is absolute rubbish. Shiloh Hill is way too talented already at this young stage in his career to have a character that is this frickin' bad. They gotta work this out. And lastly, Sean Spears got a video package outside of Full Sail saying he brought the culling together because he believed he could thrive, or they could thrive as a group the same way he and others did back when NXT was in its black and gold era. operating, of course, at Full Sail. He put over Izzy for leveling up as he expected, but said Nico Vance has proven he's not there yet and still has a lot to learn. This was fine. It's as low card as you can get. I don't have any real belief that Vance is going to be something, at least not from what we've seen to this point. He's already worked with Spears as a tag team and he hasn't flashed. Now he's going to get the one-on-one opportunity, and surely this is a match they will practice over and over again. So at this point next week, we'll see if there's actually something there with him, or if unfortunately he might be a lost cause. I don't know what the hell Spears is going to do after this, if he's going to remain a player coach, slide into the background or something. Showing Full Sail on screen, I have said this many times. Look, I understand WWE owns, or maybe has a long-term lease, whatever the case might be, on the warehouse where the WWE Performance Center is housed. So running these shows is effectively free for them, whereas with Full Sail, they had to do some partnership, and they also, I guess, had to pay for the facility to some degree. I don't understand why they are not using Full Sail more. I'm not saying they have to run weekly TV there, but when you do a premium live event in Orlando and you're not going to go to a, small suburb of a major city or another town across the United States and air it at one of those really cool venues like the theater at Madison Square Garden, or there was somewhere in Atlanta that was super cool. They've done a couple really nice shows in Texas, and I want to say like Kansas City or something like that. If you're not going to go to any of those locations, at least do it at a larger, better looking venue in Orlando, and Full Sail is that, and it has to be available because they only do so much with that facility. So seeing Full Sail here, I was like, man, they just really need to be using this a lot more. So that was it for NXT. I would say this week was another relatively ho-hum episode from the standpoint that there's just nothing happening in the men's division at any level right now. The main event, the mid-card, or the tag team that gets your juices flowing. The women are doing fantastic, but it's a repetitive NXT title match now with Kendall and Lola. We've already seen it. We also saw it previously in a triple threat. The mid-card, got a little off kilter just because Layla was hurt, so they had to go in another direction there. But like Zarya as champion has been great so far. She just does not have a super compelling individual storyline to sink her teeth into like she did with Sol Ruka and other stories previously. So right now they're just in this in-between zone where the TV is still entertaining and it's a solid 2 hours to watch. You can mostly turn your brain off while doing so, but it's not so compelling where you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to find out what's going to happen next week, which NXT has done a really nice job booking that way over the majority of this year and certainly in 2025. Okay, let's move over to AEW, and boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about from Dynamite and Collision this week. First, of course, relevancy metric in terms of the matches that aired across more than 4 hours of television. My legitimate calculation, when I broke this down as I always do, is that 2 of 12 matches this week were storyline relevant. 17%. Like literally 2 matches across these shows. One, I was 50-50 and gave relevancy credit. Another, I was 50-50 and didn't. Let's give them relevancy credit for both. 3 of 12 matches this week. 25% of these matches were relevant in storyline with people either involved for reasons of feuding or people who got title challenges they deserved. There were so many title matches this week that did not make a shred of sense. You'll hear it later. I was floored by it. All right, let's go segment by segment as we always do. On Collision, Hangman Page returned to open the show. This was spoiled on social media by Tony Khan for the purposes of popping a rating, which at 400,000, it was higher than most weeks. But as we say about when WWE does this, be it for Cody Rhodes or Charlotte Flair or any number of wrestlers, it sucks as a viewer who watches weekly to not be rewarded with a surprise return. Now, they need to do what's in the best interest of their business, which is why they pre-announce these things, but it would have been much more fun if I was watching Collision, especially I think it was a live show, and holy shit, Paige is showing up or Hangman shows up and I DVR it. Oh my God, I'm going to watch it tonight. I'm not going to wait until Tuesday. Anyway, Paige was clean cut and spoke about gardening butterflies, planting seeds, and undergoing physical therapy. He recalled how he stupidly, my word, threw away future AEW title opportunities for the Texas Deathmatch stipulation, but then he clarified that it was not written down anywhere on paper before stating plainly he will never challenge for the title again. In other words, he can go back on his word if he's heel, or he can be challenged by the champion at any given time. That is incredibly weak. Hangman said he was proud of Kenny Omega for becoming champion, so now he can focus on the other 4 men's singles titles in AEW. Even mentioning the existence of all of those in one breath sounded ridiculous. Page said we would all find out together what kind of wrestler he becomes without the AEW title. While he did not state it explicitly, I'm sure the idea is that he's going to become the first wrestler to win all 5 of those singles titles in AEW, becoming something beyond a Grand Slam champion, whatever they would call that. And that's a perfectly fine, if not potentially great direction to go with if it's booked well. But the way he contextualized his inability to challenge for the AEW title, which we called out 4 months ago ahead of that match, by the way, it left so many holes to negate that stipulation to the point that he might be able to go back on his word and still get cheered for it circumstantially. Beyond that, while Hangman did well showing vulnerability and a level of emotion here, I am not sure why, but personally, it always comes across as phony to me. Like he's turning it up to 12 when it would feel more realistic at 8, if that makes any sense. I presume he will challenge for one of the top 2 mid-card titles at All In, but I'll be curious to see the order of operations to get there. On Collision, Kyle Fletcher celebrated his international championship in front of some Don Callis family jobbers backstage. He put over Mark Davis and Jake Doyle ahead of future matches, then told Hangman through the screen that the family will have 3 of the titles if he wants to come after them. Trent Beretta wanted to fight Darby Allin for what he did to different people on Wednesday, and Brian Cage was set to fight Zachary Wentz for a reason created out of thin air about the Rascals being responsible for Fletcher's prior injury. So why isn't Fletcher fighting them? Why is Cage doing it? Fletcher did well leading the segment, and that's the best thing I can say about it because I could not have cared less about the rest. Cage beat Wentz in 8 minutes. Beretta, after the bell, wanted a forfeit victory because he challenged Allen, but he said he was not in the arena or even the state, except Darby entered anyway and then beat him in 4 minutes. Cage powerbombed Allen 4 times after the bell until Speedball saved, and of a third straight Callis family match to end this show. The national championship was retained by Davis over Bailey in the main event. Davis kicked out of a bunch of kick-based offense before avoiding Ultimate Weapon. The flip-over double knee move on the apron, he avoided that as well. So Davis drove him on the apron, nearly separated his shoulder, and then he won with a pile driver. Tony Schiavone was horrific all episode, but particularly during this match. This was meant to build Davis as a legitimate champion, but considering Bailey doesn't win shit, it was just a bunch of false finishes with Schiavone screaming about it freaking great and incredible, because every match in AEW is freaking great. Just say effing, man. Get bleeped at this point. Like, it's so goddamn annoying. On Dynamite, after a couple of vignettes that aired across both shows, Andrade El Idolo got a backstage promo saying he has no problem fighting through Callis family and taking all of their titles because his destiny is to become AEW champion. Andrade then revealed that he was in possession of the Dynamite Diamond Ring, which was stolen last week by Will Ospreay. So Ospreay had to give it to Andrade at some point off screen in something we didn't see. Renee did a lot of work carrying Andrade through this promo, but he did well too. His presentation has been much improved. He's showing more character than he has probably since he was in NXT, probably more than that, considering how much heavy lifting Zelina Vega did back then. They have also done a better job asking how you know and making it a sensible catchphrase, which was not in prior weeks when he would just spam it for no reason at the end of statements. On Dynamite, Andrade beat Doyle. I struggled with whether to give this relevancy credit, given Andrade is just going through the faction and had nothing specific with Doyle. Ultimately, I decided it was close enough, considering the goal has been stated and a number 1 contendership was earned through the victory. Since the title match against Davis is happening at Redemption, you've got to believe it's changing hands, barring Callis interference, which would theoretically push Andrade toward other titles, considering he has the ring in his possession. I assume Andrade will be fighting MJF for the title and ring together at All In if he's not part of the triple threat MJF. Otherwise, it's a bit out of place. On Collision, Death Riders beat AR Fox, Commander, and Top Flight in a meaningless 8-man tag team match. John Moxley said it was too easy for them, even though it took 13 minutes to beat 4 nobodies. He cut a heel promo talking about altitude for some reason in Virginia, saying they were sharpening their weapons because it's Death Riders against the world. Then they danced together and did push-ups ringside. Why was Mox suddenly so angry? Like, what sense did that make? Dynamite opened with Will Ospreay getting worn out while training, punching some bags on his knees in the arena dungeon as Daniel Garcia yelled at him, which itself was hysterical that Garcia is training Ospreay. Mox gave him a pep talk, saying much of the hard work is already done and there's no reason to make what is simple complicated. He said Ospreay has earned this, and while there are hard decisions to make in life, this is not one of those times. He needs to take a shot, not hesitate, and pull the trigger. In theory, Mox as the Mickey to Will's Rocky, it works incredibly well. The idea of Ospreay needing to get in the right frame of mind to achieve, that plays. The problem remains the context and situationality of it all. And we've addressed this multiple times. Is the idea that it is Mox poisoning his mind and Will believing he's actually supporting him? If so, how does that benefit Mox to turn Ospreay heel? To use him as a weapon to control the company that he previously controlled himself with a year-long title reign? Why not just do it on your own? I may be giving them too much credit even for that. It may be as illogical as we've discussed before with Mox not trying to do that, but for some reason wanting to help Ospreay become champion when he is a lesser champion. And by the way, does not defend that title nearly as much, considering how often he's actually wrestling, which is pretty much every show at this point. On Dynamite, Kenny Omega opened hour 2 with a championship celebration led by the Young Bucks. There was a red carpet and a stand-up Omega symbol as the celebratory items in the ring. The Omega symbol looked like a poster a 13-year-old would create for their friend's bar mitzvah. I could not help but laugh at this thing. The Bucks presented Omega with the non-Triple B title. He got a "You deserve it" chant. Despite being an incredibly accomplished wrestler who's won many championships before, that was weird. Omega praised the fans for not letting him give up on himself, saying fans would see the best version of him in AEW over the next 50-plus days. Why would he put a time limit on that? Ospreay interrupted. He stood with his back to the camera for way too long as Shivani was finally told to get his ass out of the ring as he was contributing absolutely nothing standing there. You literally saw a cameraman or a producer waving at him. Get the hell out of there, man. Why are you in the ring still? He said it was great to see Omega as champion. Ospreay did, grinding it out, believing in himself again. Ospreay continued filleting him, saying before it heats up between them, he wanted to thank Kenny for being his hero. He made some anime fighting reference I did not understand, but a few fans popped. More on that in a moment. And then he said he wanted them at All In to prove that AEW is where the best wrestle.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Let's pause here briefly. This is precisely what I was afraid of coming out of the title change, and precisely why I wanted MJF to remain champion going into All In. AEW is prioritizing where the best wrestle over doing what is best for the company and Ospreay individually. What you want in the main event of an epic show is not performance art applauded, but an emotionally driven match where fans so badly want to see one specific outcome that the alternative offends them and leads them to boo. MJF is the top heel in the company. Ospreay presently is the top face in the company from the standpoint of him having the most momentum and being seen as the next in line. Pay that off. Instead, you have this guy comparing their match to Goku versus Vegeta. And I'm sorry if I got that second name wrong. I really don't care. And I swear, man, the fact that I had to look this up and learn anything about Dragon Ball Z at my age, it's a non-starter. So look, I probably need one of you to contextualize this better. My understanding from my research is that neither of these guys would be the equivalent to Vegeta. The comparison is horrendous on its own. And then, this I say without needing to do any research, it is such an incredible eye roll to reference anime to build a world championship match on your biggest show of the year. Can you imagine if The Rock said, "We got a real Superman versus Batman match on our hands, Stone Cold"? And how about the ego to compare yourself to characters of that ilk when those would be who historically? Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan, perhaps? Legends of Legends? If anything, these guys would be more like Daredevil and Deadpool without the personality, right? I digress. But beyond that, it's basically playing the whole sickos IWC concept, almost gatekeeping that this is wrestling for those people, if that makes any sense. As for the rest of it, the Omega celebration was a bit weird, especially considering he basically said, look, I only have a 50-day title reign ahead, so I'm going to put on some great matches before I drop the championship. Ospreay's portion was the best part by far. He did well to reestablish their relationship for viewers, set a course for how their storyline will likely build over the next 7 weeks, despite both guys being babyfaces. There's not an inherent issue between them right now, so there was no reason to create one out of thin air. That's something that will need to be developed over time. But man, the parts of this were really tough to get through. But just wait, okay? Because Kevin Knight interrupted a handshake saying he's owed a world title shot. Then he quoted Kanye West in the year of our Lord 2026 for some reason. You know, the guy who was selling a shirt with a certain symbol on it and who says certain things about people of a certain religion. That's who's getting quoted by Kevin Knight in 2026. And then after that, he challenges Omega for redemption. Omega correctly pointed out the total absurdity of this request. And I had the thank you button ready to go. But then he turned it, saying he would give Knight a title shot because he's a nice guy. What? Omega said he's long known that Knight has it, with all the skills and hunger required, until he stupidly joined the Callis family, a mistake Omega himself once made. He tried to convince Knight he doesn't need Callis to thrive. Knight is more of a fraud than MJF, given the association, because he's actually a good guy inside. He's pretending he's not. Omega said he would take the pay-per-view challenge if he was the Jet, not Callis's lapdog. Knight said, "There's no goodness in my heart, only greatness," which I actually love. Great line. And then he attacked him with a microphone. So he's not going to be the Jet. He's Callis's lapdog, and he's still getting the title match. Darby Allin then pounced him from behind before 5 mostly jobber family members came down. And then the Death Riders had to come out to help Ospreay and get his back. The Knight part was ridiculous in its entirety, both from a booking standpoint and execution standpoint. Booking wise, this guy lost an AEW title match. He shouldn't be anywhere near the picture. That's not even mentioning that he's the current TNT champion. But okay, he made the deal with MJF where if he helped him win in the cage, he would get a shot. They lost that match. That means no shot, even if MJF was champion. But MJF is not champion anymore, and he has no claim to anything. And it was great that Omega called that out initially. I figured perhaps he would give Knight an eliminator match or tell him to beat Ospreay if he wants a shot or something like that.
No.
He says, even though you're a heel, even though you're undeserving of facing me, I know you're a good guy, so sure. And you could do it on a pay-per-view. It wasn't Knight saying he was a good guy. It was Omega assuming as much. Then Kenny droned on about the Callis situation and gave Kevin, this huge pep talk, only for none of it to matter. So now the main event of Redemption is going to be Omega defending the title against an opponent we know he is going to beat. Not someone we think he is going to beat. We know the outcome. The match should be great because they are both tremendous wrestlers, but Knight is already a champion. So we're getting another champion versus champion match unnecessarily in AEW and an undeserving challenger at a pay-per-view. The end of this segment, with the writers coming out to help Ospreay, Omega watching from behind, that has the potential to be something. But even that was ridiculous if you really thought about it beyond the moment. Ospreay just finished comparing himself and Omega to these 2 top-level anime characters, right? Well, let me switch that to superheroes so that I can make sense of it and actually give you a real comparison, because I don't know other anime characters. Ospreay basically said, you and I were Superman and Batman, and we'll finally get to see what it's like when those 2 fight. So, okay, they're Superman and Batman in this story, right? In what world would Superman and Batman need the Punisher and Aquaman to save them from, like, Sandman and a bunch of Joker's henchmen? I know I just mixed Marvel and DC there, but I assume you get my point. If Ospreay and Omega are so incredible and they're only being threatened by mostly nobodies, why do they need lesser superheroes saving them in the ring? It was laughable. And none of this is addressing that Callis family, which now holds 3 of 5 singles titles, is involved in seemingly every important men's storyline in the company. That is so incredibly frustrating as a viewer. If you wanted to bubble up one of them for this redemption match, which might be Omega's lone title defense before dropping it, I don't know. How about Kazuchika Okada, who has absolutely nothing to do, and you'd get Omega Okada in Canada? What about figuring out something for Bobby Lashley, who is literally doing nothing? Swerve Strickland, who is literally doing nothing and battled Omega a few months ago. This is so frustrating. It's exactly what happened with Bryan Danielson, who only defended against Jack Perry during his transitional title reign before losing it. What an absolute waste of a title defense, even if the match is great, which I'm sure it will be because they're both awesome wrestlers. Darby backstage confronted Kenny, saying there's no talking to Kevin. He needs to be physically abused and humiliated. Allen said he'd fight Knight for the TNT title next week and that Omega was wasting his time. Mox then confronted Omega and looked at the AEW title despite doing everything in his power over the last few months to help Ospreay win it. I'm going to reserve judgment on that interaction until we see how it all plays out. On Collision, the ROH title was on the line. Please remember this. Bandito retained over Katsuyori Shibata. Second best match of the night that probably deserved a bit more time. Bandito won with a pinning combination because heaven forbid Shibata get beat flatly after getting the opportunity due to mostly winning matches we didn't see on AEW TV. His booking, it's as poor as Shinsuke Nakamura, but you know what? At least Shibata's on TV regularly. On Dynamite, Brodito beat Aaron Solo and Nick Camarado in a meaningless tag team match. Backstage after the bell, Bandito accidentally bumped into Fletcher, who was offended. Sounds like the ROH champion has earned another AEW title match by bumping into someone.
So dumb.
On Dynamite, Fletcher retained the International Championship over Commander, who lost on Collision and is 0-8 in AEW singles matches since the start of 2025. He not only got this match, it was for the title rather than being an eliminator. Again, why did AEW introduce the eliminator concept if it was not going to use it appropriately? Basically, every title match held this week should have been an eliminator. It was such a solid concept considering AEW focuses on wrestling over story, but now they're not using it appropriately. Fletcher tore at Commander's mask after the bell for no reason, so Konosuke Takeshita saved. Kazuchika Okada then showed up from behind and took him down with Rainmaker before he and Fletcher played tug of war with the title. Brodito attacked them to back up Takeshita, though I don't believe there was any prior relationship there. Bandito held up the international title, so no, that was not an overreaction to the prior segment. He's going to get a title match. What a total eye roll. Commander did have a crazy athletic sequence in the match with a high-impact springboard Canadian destroyer ending it, but the individual parts of this were nothing we haven't seen before. On Dynamite, Darby beat Cage in what I believe was a previously unannounced random match. I could be wrong about that. Shivani was sure to tell us that this has been an amazing television program on many different levels. Allen hit a coffin drop onto Cage lying on the steel steps, following with another inside the ring to get the win. I figured Knight would attack after the bell. He did not. Fletcher and Okada were angry backstage with the former willing to defend the title against anybody, promising to be the greatest international champion of all time. He decided to give a shot to Bandito at Redemption because, again, he bumped into him backstage for all of 5 seconds and then saved a babyface in the ring and didn't get hands on him. A pay-per-view title match to someone who is already a champion, making the second champion versus champion match on the show, neither of which have any meaningful storyline build. This is also the second straight undeserved title match that Bandito is getting on an AEW pay-per-view. He lost to Jon Moxley at Forbidden Door in June. And don't forget, he lost to Swerve in the Owen Cup, like quarterfinal, semifinal, one of those matches back in May. So every major match this guy has had in AEW, he loses, but he keeps getting title opportunities. Oh, and by the way, he's Ring of Honor champion this entire time. Callis later cut a promo on Omega saying he's responsible for everything positive in Kenny's life, telling Kevin to take care of him. Speedball interrupted, claiming Knight was putting on a facade and everyone is ready to forgive him whenever he decides to go back to being a good guy. Ever hear the saying, when someone tells you who they are, believe them? Clearly, these guys have not. What is with this insistence that Knight is definitely a good guy, even though he's clearly a bad guy? It's almost like they're setting up a just because turn back to babyface, when in reality, every heel is someone who can be redeemed one way or another, except they generally have a reason to turn, not just a sudden realization. I could not get over this. Like, Darby sees him as a heel. He gets it. But Speedball and Kenny, nah, he's definitely a good guy. He has to be because he was one before. Like, what are we doing here?
What is going on?
On Collision, Conglomeration hit the ring to talk about being trios champions before welcoming Willow Nightingale, who talked about relinquishing the TBS title and not competing in the Owen, despite, becoming healthy immediately after both were decided. She again talked about competitors mistaking her smile as weakness, promising to use Redemption as the opportunity to prove she deserves to enter All In as champion because nothing will stop her. There was a lot to like about this. I'm glad Willow got the solo promo opportunity. I'm glad the guys were standing behind her as opposed to the other way around. I even liked the concept of what she was saying. But man, you could hear a pin drop during this promo. It was kind of boring and all over the place. It's something she should have been given a chance to do for the last 3 years so she could develop that skill. That way, when you put her in a position to be potentially an AEW champion, that she's able to cut a promo and have ring presence and do all those things. That said, it was 1,000 times better than the emotionless taped promo void of any charisma whatsoever that was cut by Sky Blue immediately afterward. That was dreadful by comparison. On Collision, the Demand and Lethal Twist had a backstage confrontation with Ricochet recalling how he used to be champions in New Japan with Matt Sydal, but now he surpassed him. So Sydal called him bald, which Jay Lethal did not like. This should not have been on television, but at least they did enough to give the eventual match relevancy credit. On Dynamite, Demand confronted Conglomeration, focused on the trio's titles. Lethal Twist then attacked the champions from behind, with Ricochet suggesting they might all become members of the Demand together. This was confusing, considering Slidell just joined the group last week. They had a confrontation backstage days earlier, and he was not involved here. Conglomeration Demand could not be any less interesting of a feud if they tried. Actually, they made it less interesting by involving Lethal Twist. On Collision, Divine Dominion cut a promo seated in a couple chairs in some random ballroom, with Lena Cross again completely outshining Megan Bayne on the mic. One is believable, the other is incredibly scripted, wearing the most ridiculous headdress you have ever seen. You want to put that on for the ring walk? Fine. In a promo segment, what are you doing? They told Sisters of Sin that they are basically worthless and could not compare to them. We know. On Collision, Thekla cut a promo saying every woman in the division is an enemy except for her group. No shit. She told Mercedes Moné that she will take care of the CEO just like she did the Stardom president. And then she praised Nightingale for figuring out a way to jump the line despite being a baby, doing motivational videos rather than a real woman. She closed saying the only thing worse than being a dumb bitch is being a happy one. This was actually one of Thekla's best promos during this entire run. I know I just called her Thekla twice. It's Tekla. I see the H. I say it. That's how names are usually pronounced. Short, sweet, and to the point, without any of the normal BS. That's why I thought Tekla did so well here. On Collision, Willow backstage put over Maya World for her effort against Monet, saying she wanted to team with her and a third partner against Mercedes and Dominion. Then she agreed to give Maya the first title shot after she wins the women's strap. Normally, I'd not have given the 6-woman match relevancy credit, but considering they set up the random babyface side on Collision, that was more than enough for me to give it credit for the match. So we got Mercedes and Dominion beating, of course, Nightingale, World, and Hyan. Dominion got an updated entrance, unless I've missed something on recent shows. If there's one thing AEW continues to knock out of the park for most talent, it's their entrances. A nice variety of themes and concepts with recognizable music. This was the only women's match on the show, but it did main event. Mercedes pinned Hyan after hitting Monet Maker, which was the only appropriate finish given those involved and their respective trajectories. The heel trio looked formidable together, and I could see a scenario where Willow wins at Redemption, faces Mercedes at All In, and maybe even needs help from Chris Statlander to retain the championship because Dominion tries to interfere. We will see. On Dynamite, Brawling Birds did a stage interview with Renee, reiterating that they like to drink and fight just like the people of Boston. Jamie Hayter looks so much better wearing black rather than those awful outfits, that clashed with her hair during the prior run. They were upset at the World Cup semifinal. I like that was integrated, but they said, as Brits with tits, they won't let them down like England did. What is with this women's division? Constantly saying tits and spitting. Now, I love the energy of the Brawling Birds, and the baseline of the gimmick works incredibly well. It's just a bit too over the top and try hard for my liking. We get it. You drink and you fight and you curse a little bit. Plus, if they were so focused on being a great tag team, which is what they were saying here, why did they work as singles for 2 months and then completely disappear from television? Explain that. On Dynamite, Chris Jericho cut a brief promo backstage revealing Painmaker makeup at the end, bringing his New Japan character back to AEW for like the 4th time for a rematch against Tommaso Ciampa, who followed with his standard location promo, saying he's better than Jericho, but now they will find out whether the Psycho Killer is also better than the Painmaker. Then he issued an open challenge for Collision because he wanted to fight in his hometown. It's going to be quite something, and I say that sarcastically, if Jericho ultimately wins this feud just like he did the prior one against Ricochet. What is the purpose of Jericho at this point? He's come back and had feuds with a 37-year-old and a 41-year-old, potentially winning both of them. Ciampa winning would at least make the outcome better, getting put over by someone more accomplished than him. But does he really need the elevation of Jericho at 41 years old? Is he going to get put in the world title picture? The return of the Painmaker is a unique way to initiate a rematch, but it's not like this is the first time we've seen the New Japan gimmick. It would have been interesting if that was the case. Instead, it's like the fourth appearance in AEW, and really, it's just face paint. It was corny in Japan. It's corny in America. At least the Japanese fans ate it up. All of this is super ironic because I was just thinking about the Painmaker gimmick earlier this week with no relation to the feud or match or Jericho bringing it back. It popped into my head, and then all of a sudden it's on television. I cannot say I'm positive about it, though. On Collision, Bang Bang Gang did a legitimate dog adoption video package where the Need to Be Rescued pups were named after the dog's faction members. Jay White asked to give these dogs a new life because they were going to end the other ones. It was solid. It was cute. Not particularly funny. It would have been a bit better if they did not do something similar 1 to 2 weeks ago. I also wish it was longer and there were more pups. On Dynamite, tag team titles were on the line. Cage and Cope retained over Garcia and Wheeler Yuta, who were given a title match for reasons. The challengers were 0-2 as a tag team this year, becoming 0-3 here. One of the multiple instances this week, as I said earlier, where something should have been an eliminator, not a title match. The Young Bucks clapped watching the finish from afar. It seems like the booking we have expected for this division going into All In remains the plan. The Dogs plus Claudio Castagnoli attacked after the bell, despite already losing to these guys, because these groups are aligned for reasons. Gabe Kidd wasn't even there. He's the crossover person. Bang Bang Gang saved without White initially present. He ultimately came out last, taking the shillelagh away from David Finlay, who ran away. Cope had to convince Christian to be cool with Jay given their prior issue. So this will presumably be a 12-man or 14-man tag team match at some point, to which I ask, why? On Collision, Hikaru Shida retained the TBS title over Harley Cameron, who only wrestled one singles match previously this year and was 1-5 in singles matches over the last 15 months. They were adjacent because they had issues between them and other people, but this should have been an eliminator match. If so, it would have been fine. Rough work with Shida using a new submission to retain. Queen Aminata saved in the post-match, so I suppose that's going to make her deserving of a title match too, because she ran to the ring. On Dynamite, Jack Perry cut a backstage promo saying this was chapter 2 of his AEW career. It's like chapter 5, bro. Meanwhile, he's still stabbing his stupid knife into wood for no reason whatsoever every time he speaks. Perry said he wanted to fight on Collision against someone who was like him, or like the way he used to be, someone who's the future of wrestling. Luchasaurus held the boom mic during this promo. He is now a human in a dinosaur mask, it seems. He was wearing an OG Ananobi shirt in Boston, which I appreciate, but as a babyface, probably not a good move. So Perry's first move in this new contract, in this chapter 2, is to fight a low carder in an open challenge. I could not be less interested. So that wraps up AEW this week. As you can tell, it was a serious mixed bag. There were portions of the show that were intriguing. I love the way they had a lot of those men's storylines interweaving with one another. The problem is just that there's so much lacking logic in those bookings that it feels forced together rather than naturally put together, if that makes any sense. There's still a little time until Redemption. There's a lot of time into All In. We will see how the Mox, Omega, Ospreay, maybe MJF situation shakes out. If Callis family is still heavily involved after Redemption, that's going to be super annoying. But yeah, there's a bunch of random matches announced for Redemption, just like there were a bunch of random matches announced for Forbidden Door. And right now, however long out, I think 2 weeks-ish out from that show, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, is this a card that I would pay $50 to watch? No, it's something that I would watch after the fact because there might be some good wrestling on it, but there are not matches driving me into seeing that show other than Willow and Tekla, if we're being honest. And I told you last week, I was really intrigued with what they were doing with Willow, Tekla, and Mercedes. I actually think it's the best thing AEW is doing right now, which is crazy that it's actually in the women's division because only once ever has that been the case where the best the best storyline in the company involved the women. Twice previously, but the main time, of course, was Toni Storm and Mariah May. All right, that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. On the way out, don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show on YouTube. You can listen to the show. You can watch full-length video interviews. Again, make sure you follow us on social media at Getting Overcast. And please remember,
It's all about the
so
five.
head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. We will be back Saturday night with your WWE Saturday Night's Main Event instant analysis. Then, of course, next week we'll be back on Tuesday talking WWE, Thursday NXT and AEW. For Vintage Chris Manini, this is the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.